How's everybody doing?
Y'all could do better than that. We are here. Black Thought in the building.
Yes, sir.
Oh man, listen, where do we start is the question, but we're gonna start from the top. We are here to talk about the book, but I want to take it back to the beginning of the story. I want to go back to Philly for a few minutes.
Okay.
I want to talk about your early days when you were in the performing arts school, and I'm a big advocate for the arts, right? I believe, STEAM should be everywhere. It shouldn't just be STEM, but for you, you found the beginning of your journey where Boys to Men, and the list goes on and on about the artists that were in this performing arts school. Take me there. What did it feel like?
That school it was the High School for Creative and Performing Arts in Philly, which was not unlike LaGuardia High School in New York City. And this was at the time, during the height of LaGuardia fame, no pun intended, because of there was a theatrical show and there was a TV show and this whole thing focused on that school and what it was like for kids who got a chance to attend. So yeah, we sort of attended the Philly version of that, and you had to audition and it was lots of competition sort of to be admitted. So I was admitted as a visual arts student. So I was in the visual arts program. But yeah, at the time of Boys to Men was sort of formed, there with us at that same time, and Christian McBride, Joey Francesco, Amel LaRue, Fatine Dance, like a long list of just brilliant musicians and vocalists were all there. So for me, as a visual artist, sort of going back and forth to my art classes, that's who I would see sort of singing in the hallway, and I kind of caught the bug too.
What was it like being around that kind of talent? Because everyone's not blessed to be in that kind of environment where you're like, man, everybody's coming up, everybody's on the grind, and then you find out years later, man, we're all in this music space and doing really dope. Yeah. But no one sees, like Rick Ross says, no one ever sees you shooting in the gym, right? And it takes 10 to 15 years to become overnight success is what I believe. For you, what made you get sharper in that era?
Well, I think being sharpness was taken into a different sort of consideration back then, I think. We were, it was about, and when I'm just talking about in hip hop as a lyricist,
right,
as a songwriter, as a storyteller, it was very much about, being witty and, being, proving that, you were however much more sharp than the next artist. So it was built in sort of to the culture in that way. And then I was coming from Philly, which was in many ways musically, in many ways sometimes even culturally, sort of in New York City's shadow. So we were competitive in that way, wanting to sort of break through, break out of, the muck of the city of Philadelphia too. And then, personally as a young artist, like my first, band was The Roots, and we used live instrumentation, which that was very unpopular at the time. So that was a whole nother thing. It was layers to sort of having to prove oneself that were like built into everything that we were trying to do. So it was just very competitive, I guess.
And nobody saw y'all when you were literally on the street, a mere, recreating everyone else's beats, so to speak, until you one day just, in the book, they're like, why don't y'all come up with your own music? And how did, when you turn that switch on, what happened?
We had always been making our own music at the time, and I think, we had reached the point where we were ready to sort of just, call it quits, I think, and just focus on, our education and, sort of go that route. And taking it to the streets, playing, out on the streets where we could reach out and touch, the people and vice versa was sort of, that was like the last stand. You know, we were like, if this doesn't work, then, you know, then we'll just call it, you know, quits. And that's when we started to slowly see, you know, the evolution begin when we were out there, sort of, you know, one thing would lead to another. So yeah, the rest is a long history, but the rest is history.
I want to talk about the book a little bit.
Yeah.
You begin with something that you hadn't shared for many, many years. And what I loved about the story is, you know, it brings you back to a situation where you remember certain things that aren't of today. And you're talking about playing with plastic army figures, and playing with a lighter. And I'm reading the book and I'm like, that's right, lighters didn't have the safety on them.
Right, yeah.
Right. So many things have changed.
Yeah.
Take me back to that moment. I know you've been talking about it, but take me back to that moment, because in the book, what was so poetic to me was you were trying to figure out what to do, because you're still in this creative mind, trying to figure out what to do with this thing. Is it malleable? What can I do with this? And you're lighting it, and then you're like, it gets too hot. You drop it, and kind of like casually, like, man, well, it's on fire. Let me just walk downstairs and just
right.
inform people.
Well, that's sort of what happened. That's, you know, everything right up until the casual walk down the stairs. Before I walked casually down the stairs, I tried to put the fire out.
With like a cup of water or something.
I went and got a cup of water, you know, and I put the water on the fire, and it didn't work out, and, you know, it grew. And I knew, you know, time was of the essence, so I had to, and I didn't want to, you know, throw everyone into a panic. I didn't want to run downstairs and have it being like, oh, the baby, what? Trying to make sure that I'm good first.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I calmly entered the room and said, hey, upstairs is on fire. Yeah, but this is, this is my 6-year-old mind too. I was 6 years old. Yeah. But yeah, that's where the book sort of finds us. That's where we begin.
And what I love about that, and am disheartened about, is in that same instance, your brother, while the firemen were trying to put things out, finds himself in a situation which I believe leads him to being incarcerated probably multiple times by defending his home.
Yeah.
I want to talk about that, how that affected you as a young black man, and not having your father at that point. You had male figures, but what did that mean for your brother to be in that situation, and then everything else leading beyond that?
Yeah, you know, without giving too much of the story, I mean, I guess I could. I mean, you know, well, so my father, I lost my father at a very young age, like, you know, before the age of 2. He was murdered. So yeah, having grown up without a father, and you know, my mother was still very much reeling, you know, from that loss and from that trauma at the time that I burned down, well, you know, most of the house. So yeah, if I was 6 at the time, my brother was maybe 13 or 14. Something like that. I think he was about 8, maybe 9 years older. Yeah, older than I. And yeah, just, you know, trying to defend the house when, you know, police and fire had arrived, and sort of rifling through things and tossing belongings and sort of taking what they wanted. Yeah, he got into a physical confrontation with one of the officers that led to, you know, his initial. I mean, it's not that he was an angel or a saint by any means. You know, up until this point, but he hadn't been like introduced into the juvenile justice system. So that was, you know, the beginning of, you know, what will become. I mean, you know, my brother passed away right before this book came out. I want to say he was maybe 55. I'm 52. Maybe he was 60 or so, 59, 60 when he passed away. And after having spent, you know, probably, you know, 40 plus of those years, you know, in the juvenile justice system, and then we will become the justice system. So.
What does that mean for a young man of color at that point, for something so innocent? To me, protecting your home that leads you into that life, and then how do we protect our young black and brown men from finding themselves repeatedly in that situation where they feel like they can't get out, they can't shake that?
I mean, it's very difficult, you know. It's a space that, you know, we have to navigate very carefully, you know, that we always have. But I feel like now more than ever, you know. So, you know, all we're really able to do is prepare them, right? So that comes through education, and now, education looks like something completely different than it did, you know, a year ago, 6 months ago. So it's about, you know, leaning into community and leaning into, you know, the family, you know, again, in ways that, you know, we maybe haven't, you know, for generations, and you know, acknowledging and holding space for some of these institutions that, you know, we've taken for granted, that we've allowed to be taken for granted over, you know, so many odd years that are, you know, now becoming a thing of the past. So, you know, that's where we're sort of at with it.
I want to talk about that lean in piece. We're in the library.
Yeah.
I thought it was dope for us to have it here. And
Absolutely.
if this is your first time at Westport Library, make some noise. What I love is in this story, you talk about, and I made sure that we had them here, that you used to write in the first couple of pages of the encyclopedia. So I didn't know if you've seen an encyclopedia in such a long time.
Yeah.
Because our young people have Google.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah. My original sort of, you know, Google, my original search engine was the World Book Encyclopedia and Encyclopedia Britannica and National Geographic. You know, maybe every now and then I would like look at a Reader's Digest, but National Geographic. And then you know, I guess earliest exposure to just, you know, literature and being excited about books was that like Scholastic. So like it was a book club, like a monthly sort of deal. You like, you know, get excited, you get a book in the mail. That was huge for me. But yeah, you know, that was my original, my earliest escapism, right? You know, that really lit the fire to my imagination was those books, and I would, you know, get the ideas and jot them down most immediately, like in the encyclopedia.
How did you make that? Because you were drawing, like you were creative in that way, and then you came across the encyclopedia. Like, what was that? Looking through the encyclopedia and picking out words, you and your cousin would pick out words, and like, what was that process for you to become this wordsmith that we know today?
I've just always found value in you know, the word, right? And how I've always been intrigued by how, you know, sometimes one word, you know, one syllable, you know, a one syllable word, the smallest, the shortest word, you know, can hold, you know, the most power. So yeah, I've always been, you know, just into the value of the written word, the spoken word, sort of thing.
So let me ask you this, because I find this interesting, because I would love to ask other rappers, but I have you here with me. I'm a fan of double and triple entendres.
Yeah.
How do you look at the encyclopedia dictionary and figure out how you make one thing sound multiple, you know, different ways, and for us to just be able to appreciate it? Like in the video with Flex, I couldn't even count it. I'm like, wow, he did that again, and he keeps doing it, and you keep attacking the word, and then the way that you, not just a wordsmith, but the way you make words sound as they are instruments is crazy too. But take me through that process.
I mean, I think it's just that, you know, the words are sort of, I mean, the words are part of the instrumentation, right? My voice is my instrument, and I mean, I think I've reached a point in my career where it's just a certain level of mastery that, you know, is, I mean, there's so much effort goes into it appearing effortless.
Right.
You know, that, I mean, all I can say is you got to work hard at your craft, whatever that is, and, you know, embrace it. And if it's something that you want to master, you got to, you know, rock, you got to chip away at it sort of every day. You know, so that's what I've always done. You know, I cut my teeth as a touring MC with some brilliant jazz musicians, Greg Osby, you know, Steve Coleman, Graham Haynes, Young Royal Hargrove. We would go on the road with these musicians, and you know, they'd be playing this music that sounded just crazy, just all over the place, you know, and then it would just be like rap, you know, just rap, figure out, so to get in where you fit in.
Right.
And this is before we had a record deal, but you know, we'd be sometimes in a non-English speaking country and sort of representing, you know, the city and the culture, and you feel like the weight of very much is on your shoulders, but you're trying to fit in, you know, where you don't really understand the measure that the music is being played in, just gives you a different sort of, I think, you know, dexterity when you come back to what is more familiar. You know what I mean? So having to cut my teeth and sort of, you know, making people understand what it is that I had to offer who couldn't even understand the language.
Right.
It gave me a different, you know, dexterity with the language, and you know, it's malleable, and you know, you can sort of, I can make the English language work for me. You're not locked into a pronunciation, or you know what I'm saying, even you know what a word means. You know what I mean? So, and I got a lot of that from you know, Long Live Malik B, the other MC.
Shout out to Malik B.
He was brilliant in that way, just in sort of, I call it, you know, making the English language his bitch. That was his thing. But yeah, I guess if that explains it.
No, definitely. Malcolm Gladwell says it takes 10,000 hours to perfect your craft. How many hours you think up to this point?
But how many hours? What have I spent?
Putting to your craft.
I mean, yeah, well.
I'm being funny when I say
maybe 10,000. So. You know.
I find that to be important because there may be some creatives in here wanting to be in music, entertainment. What does that mean to really perfect your craft? Like, are you working on it day in and day out? You've been blessed to be on Fallon, so you're there 5 nights a week essentially, right? So you guys are rocking every day. And in the summer, I saw you at Summer Stage with Diggable Planets and the JBs last summer, and just like you took over a show for like 3 hours, like nonstop. Like that's part of the journey. But what does it take to be that great?
You know, I think it takes embracing your full potential, right? And just continually setting a challenge for yourself that you know you're able to, you know, somehow pull it together and rise to. There's something that you know that is derived within oneself from you know that level of achievement. You know what I mean? So I think that's what it takes. You have to, you know, set a goal and complete a thing, and then you know do it again and do it again, and that's what sort of informs what it is that you're going to do moving forward. And you have to also understand that, I mean, an athlete, you know, athlete doesn't just train their swinging arm, right? You know, you have to, you know, embrace your instrument, embrace, you know, your world, your platform, your space, your body of work as a complete body. You know what I mean? And understand that it's important to, you know, to maintain, you know, the full extent of that. Yeah.
My introduction to the Roots starts with these first albums, and what I was drawn to.
This ain't the first one.
No, that ain't the first one. But when I got to this, I started to realize, and I always wanted to ask, why were the tracks counting backwards?
Oh, well, yeah, the tracks weren't counting backwards. They just they began at, I think, if our first album that we call Do You Want More, which is our first, like, you know, major label, really. Wow, we just celebrated 30 years of Do You Want More. So we start with Do You Want More. I think it starts like 18 or 19 because our demo, which is, you know, an album called Organics, begins with the first index. So it was like 1 through 17 or 18 are on that record.
Right.
So it, you know, it's something that was just cute in the beginning, and then it began. I mean, it became like, you know, this Easter egg that, you know, if you know, you know. If you're a true collector, if you're like a Day One Roots fan.
Yeah, I'm Day One, so that's why I'm like, this is pretty dope, but what is it all about?
Yeah, that's what it is, and but for me, I don't know. It's weird. It's always been weird that people consider that Organic's record like an album, because I'm like 17, 18 years old on most of that material, and I look at like my kids when they were that age, and you're still sort of trying to figure so much out,
Right.
and I don't know that. I don't know how representative that is. That like my art at that early sort of stage is of the artist that I would become. So I don't know.
Who were you looking up to at that point? Because there weren't that many hip hop bands. There weren't that many kids that were trying to do that and merge that.
Yeah, well, I mean, musically, I was looking up to Big Daddy Kane. And, actually, Wild Quest just the day before yesterday, like found our very first couple cassette tape like demos, because he's been in like this storage facility unearthing stuff for a documentary, so he like found this old roots, and it's like our very first recording, and I didn't realize how much of a Big Daddy Kane ripoff I sounded like until I just listened, just a couple days ago, like, wow, that's crazy. But I mean, in my defense, I was 14 years old.
Right.
But yeah, so Big Daddy Kane, Cool G Rap, Rakim, KRS-One, and Chuck D were huge. And Quest and I bonded over Chuck D and Public Enemy, because he was just a huge fan of the Bomb Squad production. And I turned him on to really hip hop music. Like I would show up and bring in like the Ultramagnetic MCs or NWA or Public Enemy, and he would be listening already to all of the music that sort of those samples and all that stuff came from, and that's what he would sort of put me on to. And then I would have to hold his tapes and stuff, because he wasn't even allowed to have them in his house.
That's
So,
we can't give that piece out. Y'all got to read that for yourselves.
Yeah.
Y'all had this really dope, weird, strange relationship growing up where, like you said, he couldn't do certain things.
Yeah.
Like who was the leader? Because y'all are the co-founders of the Roots. Like who was the leader? Did you take turns? Did you follow his lead?
I think we follow, and I think we continue to follow one another's lead, man. That's camaraderie, that's brotherhood.
That's dope. And I asked that because I watched the interview, and it was about Jay Dilla's funeral.
Yeah.
And to me, it's important to talk about this piece. We're talking about mental health. We're talking about men being a little more transparent, right, and comfortable in our feelings. In there, Amir says to you, Questlove says to you, or he doesn't say to you the reason why he's sitting in the back row.
Right.
And you're up front, you're like, why aren't you up here?
Yeah.
Until later on in that interaction, y'all embrace.
Yeah.
And you can explain further. I think you said to him, like, yo, I love you, and you cried in that moment. What happened in that moment? Because he says, because I'm a leader and I'm trying to be this thing, I didn't want Tariq to see me cry. I'm trying to be strong. I'm trying to be the strong guy for my guy.
I think, traditionally, right, just in our relationship, the way, at least up until that point, that it had played out, on many an occasion where, someone would have, sort of break down, I stood strong. I was able to, always be the strong one, in the equation for Amir, for Quest. And I think at Dilla's funeral, I saw him, and I understood why he wanted to be strong in that moment. And I think me breaking down in that moment was my way of letting him know that it was okay for him to also be as vulnerable. You know what I mean? To sort of to let it out. But then it's in those moments that it's about so much more than the moment. You know what I mean? So I think so much sort of manifests itself in therapeutic, sort of super cathartic, instant. At those times.
So let me back up just a little bit as we're on that point. You lose your dad at a young age.
Yeah,
Your brother is dealing with what he's dealing with.
yeah,
Your mom is struggling with addiction. You lose your mom.
yeah.
You're a young artist trying to do all these things. When did you have time to grieve all of what happened in the past?
Along the way, I've grieved and sort of continue to grieve. I think, what the book is about essentially is it's about, trauma and loss and grief and, how, like the ways in which we, cope, right? The opportunities that present themselves for us to choose. And yeah, it's about. I think it's an origin story, more of an origin story for me. That's speaks to young people who are dealing with their own traumas and their own losses to mourn, and just trying to figure out like what happens next, and how they're going to allow it to affect them, compel them, right? So yeah, I think that's what it's about at its essence, and it's about my relationship with Questlove, and how it began, and my relationship with my mother at that age, and my relationship with the city of Philadelphia. Philly plays just as much of a role. Philly's a character in this book, just as much as any person, and yeah, I think that's what it is.
Well, that's dope. Let's fast forward to the Grammy. You go through all of this during the journey and you win a Grammy as a hip hop band. What was that moment like?
Yeah, it was bittersweet for me to win a Grammy. At the time, I mean, black music and our relationship as artists with the Academy has always been
A tough one.
a tough one, and it's valleys and peaks. And I think at the time that we won that award, it was, I don't know, it was completely unexpected. And but I definitely remember feeling a sense of urgency sort of kick in that we had arrived in a way that that meant that there were higher stakes.
And y'all been on this journey for a while. It's not too many groups. The Roots, New Edition, one of my favorite groups. Y'all continue to travel, perform, entertain all of us. What does that take to be able to, some days when you don't really love these guys, but you like them, or you don't really like them, but you love them, so you gotta be around, and you wake up, you're in hotels, and you're like, so you're not gonna speak? You're not gonna say good morning? Like nothing? Like, we gotta perform. Nobody says anything to anybody during sound check.
Yeah.
But then you put on the greatest show. Like, how difficult is it, because there's so many personalities, to be able to give us the roots that we know and love night in and night out when you're performing?
It's very difficult. It's difficult, man. But like, shit don't be easy. It's difficult. So it depends on how much of a challenge you're up for in life, and it's just like, it's a marriage. So we got married essentially 30 years ago at this point, and we made a decision at that point that we're not gonna divorce. It's like you go through all the things,
right?
But you have to find a way. You have to continue to find ways to allow those things, those ups and downs and trials and tribulations, to bring you closer and to strengthen the bond. And that's what we've been blessed enough for that to have been our journey. You know what I mean? So the love is there are days that it's like, yo, I don't like this person. You know what I mean? Or there's 12 people in the Roots. It's like you can take your pick.
Right.
But I never don't love them.
Right.
Yeah.
Who is the one that is, because there's always one in the group that is the one that tries to hold the glue together. Is it you? Is it Amir? Who is that person?
I'm gonna say I'm the one who holds the glue together, because I've never quit. I've never left the band. Questlove has quit during every recording process. however many albums we got, that's how many times he's
This is the last one.
Right, he quit and then we got to bring them back. And so, you know, because I've never done that, I'm gonna have to say I'm the glue.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have someone special near and dear to us in the audience, producer Sean C., who has done Mary J. Blige, Reasonable Doubt, Jay-Z, Rock Boys, who was also the producer of one of the last couple albums that you did, and it's Cain and Abel.
Yeah, Streams of Thought, Volume 3.
Great body of work. And as I'm talking to Sean, I'm like, I'm gonna put you on the spot. And I wanted to ask him his favorite joint. He's like, you gotta ask Tariq that, I don't know. But if he were to tell you, it might be Fuel. So with that, I hold y'all both near and dear, man. And just that collaboration was amazing. I wanna hear about your thoughts on how the album even came to be and what is your favorite record on that album?
My favorite record on that album, man, maybe it's
We don't need any help from the audience.
it's hard.
If I were to say, man, I want to buy that album, but give me the one reason why, if I put the needle on the record. Well, hold on. For those who don't, like, I'm just putting the needle on the record.
I'm gonna have to say from that album, it's Thought versus Everybody. And you know why? If I'm not mistaken, that was the first joint. That was the first song we recorded for this album, right? So that was the first song we recorded, and it was as close to. It wasn't right off the top, but I just came in the room, boom, 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 boom. He was working on the track a little bit, and by the time he had, was like, I think it's coming along, I was like, I'm done. How much time had passed? So that, that informed the urgency of the whole rest of, like, that kicked it off in a way that, that's the way we worked, you know what I mean, moving forward. And I think it was the first joint that we put out, like, to let folks know the record was coming out. We did a little video, the whole thing. So off top, I'm gonna say Thought versus Everybody. And I don't like to brag a lot, I would never say Thought versus Everybody. And he had, there's a sample in the beat where it says, everybody, every goddamn body, and it was, I sort of had to rise to that energy, so it was cool.
Dead or alive, is there an artist that you would say, man, I want to do a record with them, that you have not done, obviously, with them if they're dead, but...
Sade. Just off top.
I love that. I want to get into some fun stuff. And I was thinking, like, what can I ask this man? Like, what would Black Thought think? Right? You're stranded on an island. Now, get comfortable, Tariq. Get comfortable.
All right.
You're stranded on a deserted island. You can only take one book. What is it? You can only take one album. What is it? You can bring one movie with you and one dish. You don't know when you're gonna leave. You may be there for the duration. What are those 4 things?
If it could only be one book, maybe it would be a collection, like, something
That's cheating. We're in a whole library here. Let me stop you there. How about this? I want to start with this. What book changed your life throughout your journey? What book changed your life?
The Invisible Man.
Of course, Ralph Ellis.
Invisible Man, Black Boy. Yeah, those 2 books definitely changed my life. The autobiography of Malcolm X. Stuff like that.
All right, so give me one book. Which one of those 3?
Forever.
Forever.
We didn't say forever. We just said I'm stuck on the island.
You stuck there for longer than Tom Hanks was stuck on this.
All right. Okay. The autobiography of Malcolm X.
Food.
A dish?
Yeah.
Jerk Chicken.
All right, I like that. Movie.
Shawshank Redemption.
Great movie.
Yeah, I can watch that. However long we got.
Album.
You know, maybe Hotter Than July. Stevie Wonder.
It's a great album. It's a great album.
That was
So I've been playing this game. I don't know how many people watch my show. Let me see if I got my cards. I still got my cards. But I do. Alex, we're gonna play this game called University of Dope with Black Thought.
What?
University of Dope. These are curated. So we're gonna start with this. And feel free to play along in your head if you like.
Okay.
So, the most influential rap song of all time, in your opinion, is it A, The Message by Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five? Is it B, Rapper's Delight, Sugar Hill Gang? C, Planet Rock, Africa Bambaataa, and the Soul Sonic Force? Or D, Sucker MCs, Run DMC?
Now, for me personally, the most influential of those records is probably Planet Rock. It's the first record, first piece of vinyl I purchased, like on my own with my own money. I played the record until the grooves didn't play anymore. And I just remember in Philly there were always lots of block parties, basement parties in the park, and that was like one record that even during the era of the disco break and DJ sort of looping the funk part of all these other records, when Planet Rock would come on, it really felt like you were being transported to another planet. It was just otherworldly, and the way folks would move, the way that record made people move, felt like it was just it wasn't from Earth. So just as a young person, that was incredible. So for me, it's Planet Rock, but I'm gonna have to say, most influential was Rapper's Delight. You know what I mean? Rapper's Delight, was arguably the first rap record.
Yeah.
And it was, that sort of set the tone. That let folks know that, one of the many ways it could be done. You know what I mean? Like you can sort of do it this way. It set the tone for copyright infringement and all types of other shit. You know what I'm saying? Like beat jacking and like writing rhymes for using other people's songs and the super group. Like there's so many firsts are to be are part of the whole Rapper's Delight sort of journey. But then you could also argue that The Message was the most influential song, in that it that set the tone for just how we sort of speak and our storytelling, and how just the range of sort of storytelling. You could actually speak on a rap record over a beat about what was going on in your neighborhood, what was happening around you. You know what I'm saying? Like that song, The Message, it transported us to the Bronx immediately, and still does, in a way that I like folks to be transported to wherever it is that that my pen is taking me. It's the anthropological approach.
Dope. All right, next one. If someone were to experience hip hop for the first time, what album would you give them? A, A Low End Theory, Tribe Called Quest. B, Enter the Wu-Tang, 36 Chambers, the Wu-Tang. C, Straight Outta Compton, NWA. Or D, Paid in Full by Eric B. and Rakim.
Oh man.
Unpopular opinions are welcome.
I'm gonna say Enter the Wu-Tang.
Shout out to Sean Segan.
Yeah, just as a body of work, there's I'm able to sort of to associate it with so much more than any of the other records up there. I think just because of it, again, Wu-Tang being more of a super group, and Yeah, in terms of like being representative of the culture and sort of that from which it came or had come, how far it had come, by that point when it came out to where it was going in ways that Wu-Tang was sort of ahead of its time in many ways too. I think that's a nice sort of point of departure.
I love that. And I gifted Black Thought with the game, University of Dope. And you asked me a question about who created it.
Yeah.
That's one of the creators right there, A.V. Perkins of University of Dope. So thank you, A.V. All right, next one.
Oh, and what's the R&B one called? Okay, nice.
All right.
I'm excited.
So, best politically conscious song. Is it A, Fight the Power, Public Enemy? B, F the Police, NWA? C, Hip Hop by Dead Prez? Or D, and he says, Most Def?
Of course. There's nothing else. There is no other choice but that.
Man, these are hard.
You can only choose one.
Yeah, right. I'm gonna say fuck the police. And I can know this is just my personal.
Absolutely.
Fight the Power, like I said, was huge. Public Enemy, was a huge influence, and was still a huge influence on the Roots. But Public Enemy didn't scare me. You know what I mean? Public Enemy didn't. There was a call to action, that I felt from PE, but it was different than what I felt from, NWA. And NWA felt just more connected to Philly and what my experience was at that time, and what I was sort of going through. I was in the crack. I was in that shit when they were sort of rapping about it, and I was feeling fuck the police, and then I didn't have anyone to articulate that for me, So, and then that's also one of the joints that again we bonded over. I was like, "Yo, Quest, I'm here. Check this out." And he was like, "Oh my God, get it away." And then he come to school the next day like, "Yo, what was that shit you was playing?"
Because he cannot play that in the house.
Yeah, but huge for me. And just what it meant. I think now that the more I talk about it, I think it's undeniable. Yeah.
All right. Next one. Best film with a rapper in it. A, Belly. B, Paid in Full. C, Bad Boys. Or D, Set It Off.
That's terrible.
Yeah,
you gonna have fun with this game?
I'm Paid in Full over Belly. I'm Paid in Full
Full
over all them joints. Yeah, it's easy. That's easy for me. Paid in Full.
Next one. This is where the game gets real interesting. I love it. We talked about it. If you're stranded on a deserted island, which album would you listen to? I'm giving you four choices here. To Pimp a Butterfly, The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, 3 Feet High and Rising.
3 Feet High and Rising. And, out of all those records, all powerful records that are, forces to be reckoned with, in their own right. The 3 Feet High and Rising joint, though, is something that the world has been deprived of for such a long time. Right? Like, they tried to keep that one from us. They tried to keep that whole De La Soul, Tommy Boy catalog for such a long time. We couldn't access that music, and there was a lot of my favorite joints on that record, on De La Soul Is Dead album, on, I want to say Balloon Mind State.
Balloon Mind State is my favorite.
A trifecta of music that, was lost for such a long time that just recently has become re-available. Like, it's been made available to for people to stream, and that's one of them. So I used to teach my kids about De La Soul off of YouTube, like, playing 3 Feet High and Rising one joint at a time and having it. So yeah, it's I think it's dope that out of all those joints, that's what I've been deprived of for the longest. So I'm gonna say De La Soul.
Dope. Next one. Erase one person from hip hop history. Who would it be?
But why? You just erasing jokers?
I knew this one was gonna be fun because I know that these are your people, but
you know what?
The game is a fun game. Unpopular opinions are welcome.
I mean, I would erase myself.
Nah.
I would erase myself. But if I erase myself in Mos Def and Common and Talib Kweli still exists, I feel like my influence still lives on. You know what I'm saying?
That's the first time I heard that answer.
Absolutely. Okay. So if I erase myself, then there is no way because it's okay.
Yeah,
all right, I
yeah.
get it. Wow.
That's how it becomes real tricky with this game.
Yeah.
Because you got to, if you eliminate one, you eliminate everything they're connected to and with.
I can't answer that question.
All right, so we're gonna let you slide. Next one. Because if you had to erase one from hip hop history, got him. Swiss Beats, Dre, Pharrell, or Timberland. Another shout out. We got Kenny Ortiz in the building, the man who discovered SW and Pharrell Williams. Kenny, don't kill me. This is just for fun.
Yo, I'm gonna have to erase Swiss Beats. I'll take it how you want to take it.
All day. He's not that good.
You know, yeah. I think, yeah. I'll tell you what.
Break it down.
I think, Dr. Dre was more of a movement. Pharrell was more of a movement. Timberland, I don't know. Like maybe Swizz and Timberland are arguably they're comparable for me. They hold a comparable space. But Swizz introduced me at a thing before, and he fucked my name up. Swizz.
How do you mess that up?
He introduced me after I just performed. He introduced, give it up for Talib Kweli, and I was like, so just on that alone, yeah. If I gotta erase somebody, that was Swizz did.
All right. So these are the quick 5 ones that I didn't have the digital to, but if you can only watch one show after school, would it be Yo MTV Raps, 106 in Park, Rap City The Basement with Tigger, or TRL?
Yo MTV Raps. Yeah.
The greatest diss song of all time, is it Hit 'Em Up by Tupac, Ether by Nas, No Vaseline Ice Cube, or Second Round Knockout by Cannabis?
It's The Bitch in You, Common.
Update the pack, baby. Update the pack.
I was there. I was
you were
right
there?
there. I was there.
You felt that?
When Pete and Common were doing that. It wasn't my fight. I wanted, that beat was so popping. I really wanted on that joint. But yeah, I had to let him do his thing.
Let him do it?
Yeah. I think that's and he carried it.
Best hip hop soundtrack, Friday, Above the Rim, 8 Mile, or Juice?
Juice. I'm gonna say Juice.
I'm gonna say Juice.
Oh, Juice all day. Juice all day. Of course.
The weather's getting warm, and we're gonna be barbecuing. Who would you trust to make your potato salad? Is it Rick Ross, Action Bronson, Fat Joe, or Raekwon the chef?
Why?
If I have to let somebody make it, maybe Raekwon, but I don't trust. I wouldn't trust your grandmother to make the potatoes. I'm making the potatoes. If I'm having potato salad, I have to make it.
Oh, you get busy like that?
I do.
Chef Alexis, you heard that? He get busy.
She knows.
All right. The last 2, and I'm just gonna give you up for the last one, but the last 2. Pick the best rap group from the following: Cypress Hill, The Roots, Slum Village, or Salt and Pepper?
The Roots. Oh.
Man, I'm gonna have to say the Roots.
Of course.
That was a layup. So this is the last one, man, and this is one that gets everybody tripped up. I hope y'all, if you enjoyed this, go to universityofdope.com, pick this up. I promise you, you're gonna have relatives you're not gonna like no more. If you had to erase one from hip hop history, who would it be? A, Nas, B, the Notorious B.I.G., C, Tupac, or D, Jay-Z? And you can talk us through it if you need to.
Tupac. Yeah, Tupac.
Nas, B.I.G., Tupac, or Jay-Z?
Not even a question. See,
Well, how come every
Tupac.
question is if you had to erase somebody?
I didn't make the game up, Tariq.
You know,
Get Tupac out of there.
what's the criteria? Like, what am I basing it on?
You know what's funny? When we play it, I think it's based on
based on their music?
music influence.
Oh, wow, shit.
It's open-ended. Thank you.
All right. Well, here's the thing. I was never a huge Tupac fan.
Yeah.
Like, I was never a huge fan of Tupac's music. I've always respected, him as a person. I respected, what he did, especially as, such a young person. But I wasn't a huge Tupac fan. Like I didn't play his music in my leisure. But also, I was never a huge Jay-Z fan.
Nope,
So
me
I'm
either.
saying, I never, would be chilling and just playing Jay-Z. You know what I'm saying? I did like that Blueprint album. I don't know, like I liked a couple Tupac songs, right? But then Big and Nas is, just on the strength of that alone, if I'm just on the strength of the music, then I would have to say Tupac because, I've liked his music the least. It sounds terrible. Don't quote this shit out of context and be like, yo, Black Thought on Tupac. I like his music. Don't try to play me, you know what I'm saying? That would have to be, that's my explanation.
Yeah. Now I love that. You know what? Music does something different to everybody.
Yeah.
Right? And one of the things I love asking guests on my show is music is a soundtrack to our lives, obviously. But what song best represents your journey up to this point? Or which artist's body of work represents your journey up to this point?
Not mine. I think my body of work. I think mine the most. It goes back to the whole, the anthropology of it all, and what I'm trying to, what I strive to aspire to achieve in my storytelling is something that is going to transport you to a different place and time. You know what I mean? I want it to be, transformative and to do all the things, but you only have such a limited real estate, just a small, these little bits of time that we sort of have to say it all and to, help you understand sort of all of the things. So it's about, writing music in a way that you can convey the same thing that you're able to convey with sort of just a knowing, nod. You know what I'm saying? Like that's what, I want you to get my shit like that. Like when, your auntie look at you and she like, and all that meant all of these things, right? That I try to write like that, and in recent years, you know what I'm saying, the more mature I become, the more experienced I become as an artist and as a writer, as a storyteller, I strive to achieve that sort of simpatico more and to be, more, transparent and to be more, accessible and vulnerable in all the things and to, let my writing convey all that would be conveyed in that embrace where you bust out crying, right? So I want that for my art, you know what I mean? And I feel like, I deserve it and the people who support me deserve that.
I love that. You can give it up for that. The world is looking a lot different to us. And as I was reading and watching all things Black Thought over the past couple of days, one of the things I learned is you're just a dope, humble human being. And I knew that through other people. I knew that through my brother Sean C. When we saw each other in November at our brother Styles' Peace 50th birthday. My wife and I were there, and just the embrace, the words, and it was there that I always like to tell young people, and everybody here, meet someone different, introduce yourself to somebody while you're here, because everything that you need, everybody that you need to meet is in this room. And it's important moving forward to lead with gratitude, lead with humanity, lead with kindness. And you were all of those things. And I shared with you at that moment, I said, bro, I read the book, I love it. Would you ever think about me interviewing you to talk about it? And you were like, we're gonna get ready to re-release it on a paperback. And I'm like, ooh, I got an idea.
Yeah.
And I credit Bill, our leader here, and everyone here, Alex, who worked tirelessly to make this happen. And for you just being a man of your word, and Munir, shout out to you for just being steadfast and making this happen. This is a treat, this is a blessing. And the reason why I'm saying all this is, what is it that we don't know about Black Thought that you haven't shared that you can say, you know what, let me tell you about this? Or what is it that you want to leave with us that would allow us to walk in that, to treat each other kind, as we don't know what these next 3.25 years or 3.75.
You know, there's so much that, you know, people don't know about Black Thought, because I've always been such a guarded and private person, and even more so as an artist. But I mean, it just gives me a whole new dimension of, you know, creativity to sort of go into as I, you know, become more self-aware, and as I, you know, progress along this journey. It's, you know, unlocking the doors to just so many different, I mean, not even in just the medium of music, but I'm just inspired in so many different ways, that I feel like if I had been, you know, super transparent, if I sort of told it all, as a young person or earlier in my career, I may have already exhausted some of that, you know, wonder. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, I'm excited about making stuff, which is dope. So, I guess I've become more personal, more accessible, more transparent, and I could say, you know, more to come. And then in terms of, you know, what I would leave folks with is just, I mean, and also in terms of what you might not know about me is that I'm, you know, how much of a product I am of, you know, programs, just programs, right? Like on a community level, state level, federal level, you know, free breakfast, free lunch, you know, the snack truck in the summertime, you know, community organizers when, you know, sort of do for self, that whole thing, you know, sort of hustling, right? And you know, hanging out in the library after school, and just being inspired by arts programs, right? Art camp in the summertime, and you know, extracurricular, you know, stuff that we would do on the weekends, and just being inspired by literature and art and movement, and you know, so many of these, you know, so many of our liberties, our luxuries, our, you know, like, again, it goes back to things that we, you know, had taken for granted, that are, you know, now being, you know, taken away from us every day. I think folks would be surprised to realize how much of a product of that, you know, artists that they look up to, like myself, are, right? You know, a product of, again, all that shit, Social Security, welfare, VA benefits, and, you know, the whole thing, and how much, you know, it's how real it is in the field now, and how, you know, much realer it's going to get is what I leave you with, you know. So yeah, it's important to just to continue to lean into one another now, in more ways than ever before, because we are literally sort of all we got, right? Yeah.
You are a hip hop icon, movie producer, documentary producer, artist, actor. You've done soundtracks, you've written plays. What's next for Black Thought?
I mean, you know, who knows?
Author too.
Yeah, who knows? I'm a New York Times bestselling author.
Yeah, you have to give that. That is not. They don't give that out. They don't give that out.
Yeah, you know, it's true. Yeah, you know, the new music, just lots of new music. A new Roots album is coming, hopefully by year's end. Stuff like that. You know, I really enjoy, for the past few years, I've been a professor at NYU. I teach a class called The Art of the MC that I really enjoy, and I enjoy connecting with, you know, my students, engaging with the young people in that way. So I'm probably gonna continue to do that, you know, in some way, shape, or form. No matter what I do, I just enjoy, you know, the opportunity to be an educator. So.
And I'm looking forward to the Roots picnic.
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna try. Munir, I need a pair of tickets to the Roots picnic this year. What are you looking for most? Looking to forward most for this year's Roots picnic? Did you even know it would get this big?
No, I mean, you know, we hoped it would get this big, but again, it's the sort of thing that you can't give. You got to see a thing through to fruition, right? And you know, what usually is going to serve that the most is time and effort. So it just takes time. You got to go through it to get to it. And folks be, you know, like starting a thing and 2 years in, 3 years in, you're ready to call it quits because it didn't work out. When you have to allow something, you know, time and an opportunity to sort of grow in a natural way. And that's what the picnic has done. Just, you know, we started it as something for us, by us. We would go, when we started the picnic, we would be down at the Parkway in Philly every 4th of July. And I mean, we've seen audiences upwards of 350, sometimes 500,000 people out there, right? So it was about, you know, the picnic began as something that was juxtaposed, you know, against that, as even though we were out there with, you know, 250,000, 500,000 folks, it didn't feel like a thing that was ours. And, you know, over time, we even got to curate that whole, you know, festival, but it still didn't feel like it was ours. So we would do that, you know, we would also do our Roots thing for 2,500 people. You know what I'm saying? The picnic is something that began in a park on a slab of concrete when we, you know, aspired to be at the Plateau in Fairmount Park or at the Mann Music Center in Fairmount Park, where it has been for the past few years. But that was a dream. Right, and now, you know, it went from 2,500 people to like 75,000 people or something. So this year is the 18th. It's gonna be the 18th annual.
Wow. You still get nervous when you get on stage?
I mean, nah, I don't get nervous when I get on stage. I mean, things make me nervous in life. You know, not getting on stage.
Nah.
Nah.
Man, listen. It has been a pleasure and an honor. Black Thought, I love you, brother.
Thank you, June. I love you as well.
This is dope. Ladies and gentlemen, please give it up for Tariq, Black Thought, Trotter. Come on, y'all can do better than that.